Okay, today seminar is about the topic 3D is implementation on background. I will explain a bit about our title because some of you may not know or familiar with this kind of terminology. So the first thing is instant segmentation. So segmentation means given an input, and you would I would like to segment each object in the input. For example, I have a table, chair, board, and television. So I would like to separate them in different objects. So maybe you have heard about object detection. Object detection is given an input and you assign each object with a box, with a bounding box. Instant segmentation is one step further. Is not just a box, but a pixel, every pixel of that object. So for example, if you have a rabbit like this, the detection is detect a box, bounding box that cover the rabbit. But instant segmentation is you detect every pixel of the object. So that is a definition of instant segmentation. Background, the second term is background. Background means a set of point in the space. So if you use a 3D scan, if you use a 3D scan through the you scan room, you can extract each coordinate as a point with its color. And when you visualize in 3D space, you can see the room normally. So we have some 2D instant segmentation for image, and we have 3D for example is for point cloud. So given a point cloud, I would like to separate every object by its point. So I say that that region belongs to a television, and another region is belong to a table, something like that. So here is the difference between image and point cloud. So point cloud, the definition is it is a set of points and each of which is represented by a coordinates and its features such as color or normal vector. Here I show the difference between 2D image and 3D point cloud. So 2D image you can represent by a contiguous grid. What do you mean contiguous grid? It is pixel next by pixel. It is dense grid. However, in point cloud, it is irregular. It is unstructured. It depends on the data, depends on the object. So not everywhere have the point. It only exists on the object. More accurately, it only exists on the object surface. So that is one of the main challenges in 3D background processing. In this slide, I show the pipeline of obtaining a background
in commodity sensors and upload it to the cloud where it is
To acquire this data, novice users capture an RGB
semantic annotation tasks are then deployed to label the objects in the scene and retrieve and align CAD models to these objects. We designed an easy-to-use RGB-D capture system. Here we see the color and depth views. As the user starts scanning, a feature bar on the bottom of the screen indicates the likelihood of maintaining tracking through the video sequence. Here we see the loss of features while scanning a white wall. At the end of the capture, the user uploads the data to our servers where we obtain camera poses and a surface reconstruction. We then use Amazon Mechanical Turk to crowdsource semantic annotation tasks. Users paint over an over-segmentation to label objects in a scene. These labeled objects are then annotated with CAD models.
as you can see, they obtain the 3D reconstruction. And if you zoom in this space, it is point, their point with color. And here the procedure is they are annotating the input, because our mechanism is supervised training. So you have data and you have a label, and you need to label it by human. Okay. So now I will revise some main approach in this field. We have two main approaches. First one is detection based. It is first I detect a bounding box, and then inside. So when I detect a bounding box, I know where object is, but it is costly. Costly means I roughly identify where is the object, and then inside each region that I detected, I segment the object. So that called detection based. And the second is grouping based. Grouping based means I don't detect any bounding box for each object, but I detect the whole semantic map. Have you ever heard about semantic segmentation? Anyone? I know. Okay. Semantic map means it is another task called semantic segmentation. Semantic segmentation is given an input, and you predict for every pixel of the class. So for example, you have two chairs, it is same. So you have, in 2D, you have image, and you have to assign for every pixel a class. You don't care about different object. So it is somehow related to the instance segmentation, but in instance segmentation, every object is independent. So different TI is different. So they, based on semantic segmentation, first they categorize which region belong to which kind of object first, and then they grouping and cut out the object, different object. For example, I have two chair. I grouping one chair into one group, another chair to another group. That is called grouping based method. So I will revise some detection based methods. I review 3 papers. They are in CBBR and NIPS. So this is the first paper. The first paper is generative shape proposal network for 3D instant segmentation in PyCloud. And their motivation is they want to generate the high quality proposal for PyCloud. I will explain a bit. First is proposal. In object detection, we have a terminology called proposal. Proposal means some initial guess, because when you have data, you need to have some guess. Guess is where, or for example, I have a picture, and I have maybe I guess by a color blobs. Reason is light. That reason is dark, or a region have a green color. Maybe I have some guess. So proposal means initial guess. That is the object, and then I will update my prior, and then I will refine to update the prior to be more correct. So proposal is some initial guess of the object. Example is because 3D per cloud, they are unstructured. So using 2D method to get proposal is not so accurate. So their motivation is they don't use 2D proposal, but they use another approach to get proposal. So their network called Generative Shape Proposal Network. And here is the architecture of their proposal network. So they have central network. So central network, the purpose of the central network is they try to predict each object center. Each object have a center, and that network tries to predict the center. And it is supervised by the object, the real center of the object, because we have a label. We have a label for everything. So this network will predict object center. This is a prior network. This prior network, it is a Gaussian prior for the object. The next network is recognition. This is prior data recognition. And two of the network, they have the output, and they try to eventually generate. This is the final network to generate the actual proposal. You can see that the proposal is, you guess where the object is in 3D. So here, by having a good proposal, they try to refine. So I told you proposal is some initial guess of the object, and they need to refine it. We need to refine it. And for segmentation, you need to identify three things. First thing is which class the object belongs to. Like it is table, it is chair, it is board, and other thing. And the second thing is bounding box regression. Bounding box regression means you have the red one is a box, a 3D box, because the proposal is not so accurate. So you need to refine it. So regression means you refine your box to be more accurate. And inside this region, they need to segment, because your bounding box may contain some background point. So you need to remove the background point to keep only the point that belong to the object. That's called segmentation. There are some terminology mean outlier line. It is more advanced, but I think it is not so important here. So the main philosophy is they try to use another approach to get more accurate proposal. Because if you have more accurate prior, more accurate initial guess, your refined step will be will be easier. So that is the main philosophy. This one is another paper. It is also about detection-based methods. It is quite complicated, but I think it is still simple. And you can see they combine both 2D and 3D feature. So the conventional method use only 2D image or 3D 3D background. But here they try to combine both of the information, because they think that they are complement to each other. And first, from the multi-view, we have multi-view of the scene. For example, this view, that view, another view. And from the multi-view, they have 2D feature of multi-view. And then if you study computer vision, they have some 3D reconstruction from multi-view. So you can project your 2D feature into 3D. So it is quite complicated, but you understand it simply that if you have a scene and you have multi-view, you can map it into 3D. Okay. And from the 3D feature, they have geometry and color. As I told you, you can have geometry mean X, Y, Z, the coordinates. And color feature mean RGB, the color. And they put into 3D convolution and concatenate. This is okay. And this one is, I just told you, it have 3 things, right? This one is class label. So it, for every object, it identifies class label. And for every object, it identifies the box location. It means box refinement, like the previous method. And also here, for this one is segmentation. After they have a box, they segment to keep the point belong to the object and remove the background point. So the 3 conventional steps in detection-based segmentation is you take a class label, you take a bounding box, and segment it to remove the background point. This one is another paper about detection-based. Is learning object bounding boxes for 3D instrumentation for point cloud. And this is presented in NIPS 2019. So the architecture is very simple. So you have input 3 point cloud, and you have global feature. Global feature means it is one by one vector. So point feature means for every point you have a feature. So you can see that this one is 1 by C. C is number of channel. And this one is N by C. N is number of point and C is number of channel. And for predicting the bounding box, they use only the global feature. And from the global feature, they output all the location of the box. This is the first step. So here is they identify which object is and where it is in the input. Here's the detection. And here is the segmentation step. So for every object, they segment the point belong to the object and the background separate for each object. So this is as you can see, this one is more simple than previous one, and they claim that their method is simple and fast compared to previous method, up to 2 or 10 times. And also they propose some other algorithm, because here they use only one global feature to predict for every object. So they must have some good algorithm to predict for every object. I think it is more advanced, so I don't present here. Maybe later on you have some knowledge about object detection. We can discuss in more detail. So in conclude, we have the detection-based method. It tries to detect each object with a bounding box, and then segment to keep only the foreground point and remove background point for every object. The second method is grouping by approach. So I also reviewed 3 papers. First one is SGPN, Similarity Group Proposal Network for 3D Cloud Segmentation. Also, we start from the input background, and then this one is backbone. It is similar to CNN. It is a backbone network. It is a feature extractor to extract the feature for each point. So after going to a point net, so here they have here is number of point and here is number of feature. And after that, here you have number of point and number of channel, feature channel. And then for every point, so the feature mean you have some characteristic of the point and its neighbor. And then because they claim that if the object belong to this, if the 2 points belong to the object, they should share some similarity. Okay, and they, based on that philosophy, they grouping the object based on the similarity of the point. For example, I have some point in the table, and in the feature space here, it should share some similarity, belong to the table. And here they construct a similarity matrix. It is pairwise. So if you have n point, it is n by n matrix. And then they group the point to get the object based on the similarity of the point in the input space. And here is another information required for instance segmentation, means which class it belongs to. And here is because this one is for every point, but in instance segmentation, there's some point it belongs to background. It does not belong to the object. Like you have a cell or a floor or the wall. So here is you have some confidence map to get only the object in interest. For example, chair and table, and you eliminate the point that we don't consider. And eventually we have instance segmentation. We don't need the box here. The box is only the intermediate step in detection by method. But in here, as you can see, you detect the whole map with each feature. So here they claim that for 2 points belong to an object, it should share some similarity. And they, based on that philosophy, they group the point to get the object. That's the main philosophy. This one is next method of point group. Also grouping by method. Okay, actually I already presented paper before, and we're starting from the input endpoint. This one is the color. This one is coordinates. And this one they put into the backbone network. It is similar to the feature extractor. So after feature extractor, they have n by k. K is number of channel. From here, they predict 2 things. First one is semantic branch. It means predict the object class of every point. It is semantic segmentation, I just told you. For example, I have for every point I predict it is that point is chair, another point is table, other point is television. So for every point, I assign it into a class. And the second thing is offset branch. So offset branch is you predict how far is it from it, how far is the point from its centroid. So if you have offset branch, you can perform some transformation from the input here to get some cluster. So for example, I have a television, I have a label. I can know what is its center. And then I train the network to ask every point in this television to move to the center. For every point, I can estimate the distance between here and the center. And after have that I call it offset. And after predict the offset, I can do some transformation. Because you can see here is more cluster, and it is easier to separate the object. So they depend on two things. They have the semantic branch is one cluster, and they have the offset. They have cluster for semantic, the cluster for offset, and they have two cluster. And they have taken the union of two cluster into the total cluster. And they doing some pruning because you have two cluster, two set, it have overlap. If you have overlap, you have prune it to remove the overlap. So another question here is why do you two cluster? For example, they have if what happened if they use only one cluster? If they use only semantic branch, if you have two chairs too close to each other, it will be difficult to separate them. But if you have offset branch, if you have two, because when you do you separate, it is far from each other. So it will be more it will be easier to separate the object. However, what happens if you only offset branch? If you only offset branch for some object very large, your prediction is not so good. So in that case, the semantic information is better. Okay. So here is some other terminology mean NMS. NMS mean you remove the overlap for simplicity. Remove overlap because you have two sets. It belongs to same object, and you should remove some overlap in your prediction. Here is one of the state-of-the-art algorithms. So in this algorithm, the method is you have the input, you put into the backbone to also get the object feature. And from the object feature, in this method, they predict three things. The first one is a feature term. Second one is spatial term. And the third one is occupancy term. So I explain spatial term first. Spatial term is similar to the offset. Similar to offset, it means it predicts what is the object center to ask the object to move to the center. So the main philosophy in this method is also you move the point near to cluster in the object near the object centroid, and then you group the object. However, the new new thing here is they propose terminology mean occupancy-aware. So occupancy means for every object, you estimate how many points belong to that object. So I think if you have some information of object scale, because for different object size, you have different number of points belong to the object. Like if you have a table, the number of points belong to the table is very large. But if you have very small thing, the number of points, for example, a chair is much less than the table. And that information is you predict like the capacity of each object, how many points the object contain, how many points that the object contain. And based on that information, I think it strongly related to the object scale and the object size. And that information may help them to get the good result. And after having the feature term, spatial term, and occupancy term, feature term means you predict like object class. Here is geometry, and here is how many points that object can contain, and you combine the three features. And here they use graph clustering. So after having all the information, they can represent it by each point is a node in a graph. And also they do clustering on the graph. Similarly, the node here is the point, and the W here means the similarity, like the similarity between 2 points. So you have 2 nodes is more similar. The weight, like the distance between 2 points is closer. And then you do some merging, node merging. For example, you have graph like this, three nodes here close, you merge to 1. 3 nodes here close, merge to 1. And then you have final graph. In the final graph, each node represented by one object. And here is a visualization of the final result. Okay, so next I will present our proposed method for instance segmentation. The motivation is, as I present, we have two main approaches for 3D instance segmentation: detection-based and grouping-based. And in fact, grouping-based method dominate the 3D segmentation, and detection-based method is very slow and not very accurate. So we try to propose a fast and accurate detection-based method to be competitive to grouping-based method. So we revise the existing method, and we try to understand why they are slow and not very accurate. So eventually we point out 2 problems in existing model. The first one is point cloud interpolation is expensive. And the second one is bounding box prediction is sensitive to localization error. I explain what is interpolation and why they expensive, and why bounding box prediction is sensitive to localization error. The first thing is interpolation. So point cloud interpolation is you try to derive a feature that associate with a location arbitrary location from known the known point. For example, I have 3 known points here. I have a different feature for different point, and I would like to estimate the feature belong to this location. So a very common way you take the weighted average based on the distance. Okay. So there are 2 steps. There are 2 steps in interpolation. Actually, here I have only one example. In fact, input may have 1,000 points, and the reason why it is expensive is it needs to have 2 steps. The first one, you need to query nearest neighbor, and the second, you compute the weighted sum of each neighbor. Okay, in 2D image, they are represented by a contiguous grid. So because you have pixel nearby pixel, you have pixel everywhere in your image. So the neighbor can be queried at constant cost. You have any coordinate, I can tell you what is the neighbor at constant cost. However, the 3 points, they are irregular. You don't know, actually you don't know whether the point exists or not. So what you need to do is you compare your point to with all the known point, compare the distance to all the known point to know where which point is a neighbor of a given point. So if you have total k query, it means the new interpolated set is k point from the original endpoint. The total cost is n by k. So the cost, so we try to propose the algorithm with low cost at n plus k to replace interpolation. Okay, so I explain a little more about why we need interpolation. In detection segmentation, actually, if you learn about CNN, the feature will have a small resolution compared to the input. If you have heard about AnnexNet, right? AnnexNet, some CNN. So your feature will be smaller. And in fact, in segmentation, they don't predict the object at the input space resolution because it is too expensive. They try to predict a small resolution and upscale to the original resolution. And if you want to upscale, you need interpolation. Understand? The second problem is the bounding box. So in this figure, I show you that the bounding box is more sensitive to localization error. I have the object, all the points belong to an object, and it's labeled. Ground truth is by the blue, covered by blue. However, due to some error, because your prediction may have some error, because it's not always perfect, it needs to have some error. So for example, I have some rotation error. If I have some rotation error, the impact is very big. If I have a box, you can see the portion of the point that not covered by my prediction by orange is very large due to small amount of error. And here is a translation error. If I translate only a bit from the object, I also have a large portion of the object not cover. For example, you have a door. You need to perfectly put the box in the door to cover it, but it slightly rotate it or slightly translate it, you may have some big error. That's why we argue that localization error is severe in pairing box mechanism. So how to address that? So we try to address that by sphere localization. So for sphere localization, actually it is invariant to rotation. When you rotate a sphere, it's still same. And also it have little impact to the translation compared to the binding box. For example, you have a door and you put a sphere and you move the sphere back or forward. Still, your prediction is pretty good, right? So that is our main philosophy. We try to avoid the pairing box, and we propose another mechanism is sphere prediction for the point cloud. And here is our proposed method. We have the input point cloud, and here is a feature extractor. So here is the after feature extractor. I have here is a feature. Why I have different block like this? Because I told you when you do extract the feature, your feature will be get smaller, so smaller and smaller. Here, but I don't use one resolution of the feature. I use different resolution. So from those different resolution is called pyramid. Pyramid is smaller and smaller. I go to a sphere branch. The purpose of sphere branch is I put a sphere into each object and each class. Like this one is chair, this one is table, this one is chair. For each object, I detect a sphere, and then RLI means for simplicity, it means I crop out. I mean I process independently for every object. So that called ROI. ROI means region of interest. Region of interest. For example, I have one sphere and I am interested in only this region. And I crop it out and I process it independently from the input. So here I have 3 objects. I process 3 objects independently. So after I have one object, because the sphere may cover, you can see the sphere green one may cover some part of the table. I need to remove it. So in mask head, I will keep for this object, keep only the point belong to the chair and remove the point belong to the table. And eventually I have the output like this. This is the actual output by my network. This is the actual output. In more detail, I draw the sphere head and mask head more detail. It is simple. For sphere, I detect a class, sphere, and sentinel. And for this branch, I create a mask. Segment means I have a mask. Because I process each object independently, I only detect foreground, background, binary option. So it is why it called a mask. this is dynamic outlier line that we propose. We revised some existing method, and we found that existing method, they try to, I will explain very simple. This one is for 2D. The orange one is the feature because it is image, so the feature it is contiguous everywhere. And outlier line here is your region of interest. For example, you previously you a box, so your region of interest is a box. First, you divide your region of interest into bins. They call H1. This one is a bin. Inside each bin, you extract the feature. For example, I have 2 by 2 bins, so the output will be 2 by 2. So I have a region of interest here. I have 2 by 2 feature output. Here is the outlier-aware pool for 3D. You can see the 3D here is sparse, not everywhere. And also you divide by bin. And for some region that you don't have any point, it is missing, it is empty. However, we found that dividing the bin here is very difficult for the sphere. How we don't know how to divide the sphere to keep the resolution. For example, you define through like this, it's very weird. So what we do is we don't divide anything. We keep the same sphere, and we just extract any point inside it, inside the object and out, to process it independently. Because only this region have a point belong to the object. So I extract it out and remove other point outside of the region to process it. And this process is applied for every object. So here's I told you the algorithm for replacing the interpolation. So let's recall interpolation. I have 1 point, and I need to compare to. I need to evaluate the distance to every other point to get the neighbor, right? So if I have a k point and I need to estimate to the n original point, the total complexity is n plus k, n multiplied by k. However, we replace by another algorithm. For simplicity, we have 2 loops. So each loop have, this one is from 1 to n, this one from 1 to k. 2 loop continuously. Total complexity is n plus k. So not loop in loop, not loop inside loop, but here is 2 dependent loop. So in this step, we try to index. Index means we remember what is the point, what is the coordinate of the point. And here we assign for every point of the outline coordinates by the indexing mask. In indexing step, we create a map grid. It is like a big grid for every point inside space. And then we, based on the big grid, we assign for every point inside. Maybe it is more technical, but you can see it simply. We don't have a loop inside a loop. If you have a for loop here and for loop here, if you will n multiply with k. But here I have 1 loop here and finish that loop, and another loop here. It is n plus k. Okay. We do experiment on two standard data set on 3 per cloud is ScanNet and NYU V2. And we evaluate the method in two metrics, is AP mean average precision and runtime. Here is the performance in AP 25. This one is our method, this line. And you can see that we outperform existing this detection-based and grouping-based method. You will see the grouping-based method is dominant because you have many methods in here. I just told you that we think that one of the main reasons why we don't the detection-based method is very limited is interpolation is very expensive. When you have very expensive interpolation, your network will be very slow, and it will limit the popularity of the detection-based method. And here we also compare in the NYU dataset and also our method better AP compared to the other one. We evaluate the runtime of existing method, and here is our method. We are very competitive to the fastest one. This one, the fastest one, and we analyze in each component. This one is backbone network. This one is other process. In our method, we have the backbone network, the sphere branch, and the mask branch. And in this work, we perform the network on both CPU and GPU. So we think here is still the bottleneck. If we can see our backbone fast, mask head fast, and if we can optimize this bottleneck, we can have very competitive runtime. So what I told you, we think that the box and the sphere, the box have a limitation of the localization error, sensitive to localization error. And here we do the application study to show that if we replace the box by sphere, we have very big improvement. So we replace all the network. We replace all the network by using from box to sphere, and we check, and we have this improvement. Here we visualize the data, and you can see here, if here is box detection, here's sphere detection, and if you change the orientation of the view, so you have some object is not detected anymore. This object is not detected. The table is not detected, but either one is more robust to orientation changing. More example of sphere detection. So first we detect sphere, and then we detect the point inside. So in summary, in this paper, we propose learning sphere instead of box, and we propose an algorithm, low-cost algorithm, to make the network fast. The new algorithm will be complexity by n plus k instead of n multiplied by k. So that is two contributions in this work. That is all my presentation. Thank you. Do you have any question?